Hey there, fellow horse lovers. Welcome back to the Daily Ride podcast. My name is Morgan. I am your host. And today I am so excited to be able to share with you a conversation that I got to have with Noche Miller. Noche Miller wrote an outstanding book called Understanding Horse Whorls. And let me just tell you how much I love this book. I bought this book for myself and devoured it in one evening. I handed it to my mom, who then devoured it in one evening herself. It currently lives on my coffee table and I reference it almost weekly. I have bought multiple copies and given it to family and friends. I've loaned it out to other people. It has been game changing for my relationship with horses in general, but specifically for my relationship with True Heart. When I first got True Heart, she was unlike any other horse that I had worked with before. Her whorl pattern is very different than Grace's whorl pattern was, and I really wasn't sure what to make of her. And she's different. True is a horse that's probably not going to be anyone's cup of tea, and I love her for that because honestly, neither am I. I think that can be a beautiful thing. And as I get to talk to Noche about, the cool thing about horses is they come with this physical map of who they are and what their bodies are capable of in how their hair lays on their bodies. Um, Head whirls, face whirls often can speak to a horse's temperament, and temperament combined with their treatment results in behaviors, or as Noche calls it, horsenality. And this book has been a wonderful resource in understanding True's whorls, Grace's whorls, the whorls that I probably have, other people's horses, and in understanding who they are, their personalities, how their bodies move. We can do a better job of how we approach our relationships with them and how we approach training with them. The other cool thing about Noche is because of her understanding of horse whorls, she also got involved with positive reinforcement. And she now is one of the instructors on Horse Tricks 101, which is a wonderful club that True Heart and I are members of. And you guessed it, they teach positive reinforcement and all kinds of horse tricks, from husbandry, general animal care to silly tricks. And it has been such a source of joy and positivity and a wonderful resource in my horsemanship journey with True. If you know anything about True and I, we love our tricks. True knows about, I want to say about 30 tricks now, working on new ones all the time. She has trained me with some tricks. She's definitely trained her grandparents with some tricks. And so this is part of our daily life. And so when I found out that Noche is a listener of this podcast, I squealed a little bit. And I was even more excited when I asked her if I could interview her for this podcast. And she said yes. So I really enjoyed getting to pick her brain, getting to connect with her and hear a little bit more about her story, and letting her provide some context for what she's currently working on, the new book that she's writing, how she stumbled upon positive reinforcement, and the transformative power that it's had in her life and with her horses. So please enjoy this fantastic conversation I got to have with Noche Miller this week. I enjoyed talking to Noche so much, and we had quite a bit to cover. So I, for the sake of time, have broken our conversation up into two different podcast episodes. Today is part 1 of 2 of our conversation. Hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me on the Daily Ride podcast, Noche. To begin, do you mind sharing a bit about your background, how you first became interested in horses, and what led you to studying horse whorls and into the world of trick training?
Well, I've ridden horses my whole life, longer than my whole life actually, because my mom rode up until she gave birth. So I don't know if that pre-birthing time counts or not. But
Wow.
um, then, as soon as she could again, she would go out to the barn and set the car seat on the roof of her car, get on her horse, and come over and pick me up and ride. And so I've had horses and ridden horses my whole life. We started out at a barn, a pasture at some old farm where she boarded. And we didn't have riding lessons. We didn't have anything formal like that. And I think that was the best start I ever could have gotten because I didn't learn how you should do things. We just did whatever worked. So I didn't have any preconceived notions about not hand feeding horses or what did work and what didn't. So we just rode around trail riding, rode the roads and the cornfields and stuff growing up. It wasn't until high school when I got my first saddle. We moved to Illinois, and the place where we boarded, um, the people who owned it took pity on us. There was me and my mom and my brother all riding one horse out there, and they were like, "Hey, we've got this horse sitting out in the pasture. People didn't pay their board and abandoned him here, and if you guys want, you can take him and ride him." So, along with that horse, we got a saddle. I don't remember exactly how the saddle came, but that was my first saddle, first experience riding in a saddle. And he was a great old horse. He would buck us off if we ever told him what to do. He would he would babysit anybody all the time as long as they just sat on him and let him go. But when me or mom got on and told him what we were going to do, he got mad and said no. So he was a great instructor. And we got into team pinning and actual trail riding, not just down the dirt roads, and a little bit of everything, some endurance and just everything that was available. And that was a lot of fun. And it was on one of those camping trips with the horses, out trail riding, that we were sitting around the campfire reading an article in, I think it might have been Horse and Rider, maybe Western Horseman, about horse whorls. And we were reading about double whorls and how they showed a somewhat neurotic horse, according to the article. And we looked over at the horse tied to the horse trailer, who was a double whorl, and he was tied with one of those horrible elastic bungee cord type lead ropes, and he would pull it out as far as he could go and then let his head snap back against the trailer. And we were like, wow, yeah, neurotic. So that was my first experience with whorls, and it seemed to fit and sparked a bit of an interest.
Hmm.
So then when I graduated from high school, I moved out west and did not get a ranch job immediately, but eventually ended up on a ranch doing ranch work and starting colts for the public. And as the horses came in, I would look at them and notice the whorls, and this mostly on the body, because the forehead whorls were interesting, but some of these had really unusual whorls across their body. There was a strongly, very nicely reining bred half Arab called Wingnut who had flank whorls, and one of them came like up to the center of his back, and the other one was just a tiny little flank whorl. And he wanted so bad to be good, but he'd be going across the round pen and just tuck tail and bolt on a regular basis. And I put that and the unusual hind or flank whorls together and realized that these whorls were obviously affecting the way he was moving. Well, it seemed obvious to me at least.
And was it only going in that one direction that he would do this?
No, it was in a straight line. Just
Huh.
anytime. He just couldn't not. I think that he would lose control of the hindquarters. One side would give or not. That lack of control, feeling of control in his hindquarters would spook
Interesting.
him and make him bolt because he was a sensitive little guy. So it's not like he was a big, tough, sturdy quarter horse. He was this sweet little Arab guy. So maybe it didn't take quite as much to scare him.
Interesting.
But yeah, so a lot of horses like that came in with unusual body whorls and showed unusual, like, inability to take a lead, or there were some forehead whorls, some temperament whorls, because body whorls show how the horse will move, how the muscles function. And whorls on the forehead are temperament whorls. They show how the horse thinks and acts and reacts. So there was one, a Morgan, recently gilded stud, former stud, who had not been able to handle life as a stud. He was just too high strung and he'd pace the fence and have fits about it. So they gilded him and sent him out to get started. And he had one single whorl set way up high to his left, our right. And I put that together with the whole horsenality thing at the time and realized that he was showing strong right brain extrovert traits. And that was where I got started realizing that the side of the head the whorl is put on shows us what type of temperament they have.
Hmm.
Not just that a high whirl will be an extrovert, but that a high whirl to one side is this type of extrovert, and a high whirl to the other side is the other type of extrovert, and all kinds of fun things. So that was how whirls came about. It was that same ranch job. I had this wonderful little Morgan gelding that my mom had bought and sent out to me to start for her. And I kept him because he was just too good a boy. And we were calving in a lot. You know, you calve in the calving lot. That's a spot up close to the barn where you can keep a really close eye on them and get them in if they need help. But then once the calf is born, you take them out to pasture so that they can go roam and be cows because that's what cows do. And those cows were not nice. They would eat a horse very happily. I had had them crash. Yeah, it wasn't fun, but it was quite the learning experience. I'd had them crash into wooden fences with me standing on the other side without even slowing down, trying to get you.
Oh,
So I was out there
that's
trying to get
terrifying.
this. Well, it was. It was really terrifying. I'm really chicken now. I won't get close to a cow who looks mean. But I was trying to get this calf up to go out with his mom, and the calf wouldn't move, and I couldn't get him to go for anything. And I was not going to get off and try to get him up on foot because I didn't want to be eaten by a cow. So I'm there fighting and trying everything I could do, yelling and screaming and waving arms. And my horse looked at me over his shoulder and rolled his eyes. And then he picked up his foot, put it on the calf, and shook the calf. And the calf jumped up and ran away. I was like, whoa. So I stopped and I petted him and I scratched him and I told him what a good boy he was. And I rewarded him strongly without knowing that this was any type of training method. And we were able to repeat that and able to get it on cue until I was could do that with any calf. I would walk up to it, give the cue, and he would put his foot on it, shake the calf, and get it up. And that was my introduction. Well, not my introduction, but my first actual training attempt with reward based training, purely by accident.
So when you say you rewarded him, for him it was the good boy and the scratches and the pets that was the inadvertent reward that you were reinforcing the behavior with, right? Or did you have treats at that point?
I didn't have treats on me at that point. At that time, I did use food.
Mhm.
Every horse I started got a cookie with the bit when they were learning how to take the bridle. I taught them to step over to a mounting block and gave cookies when they stepped over just because it made sense and nobody had told me not to. But at that time, yeah, we stopped. We didn't follow the cow and calf. We stood there and I scratched his neck and petted him and, did my absolute best to tell him how very good he had been.
Well, and it sounds like he had a really good understanding of your behavior and your communication with him if he was, rolling his eyes at you like, "Oh my gosh, I have to do this myself."
Yes. Well, he was a stacked double whirl. So twice the horse with twice the whirls. And
Oh,
he was
okay.
extremely intelligent. And yeah, he had strong opinions and those were not good of people. He knew he was smarter than we were, and he often rolled his eyes at me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure True does that to me too. It's usually like, "What are you bringing out to the barn now? What do I have to deal with
Yes.
today?"
Seriously human.
Right. "Why am I stuck with the weird one?"
Now, I've seen her. I think she enjoys her weird human.
Well, I think the world of her too, so I'm glad she stuck with me. Um, you said, some cows look mean. Are you referring to, like, a look they give you, or do whirls apply to cows as well?
Whirls do apply to cows. There's been some really good studies done on cattle. They're actually easier to do good scientific studies on than horses because horses have so much training and human intervention in their behavior that makes it harder to tell what is whirl and what is training. But with cattle, they're generally run without being messed with much. You have a whole herd that's run the same way, so they have the same training. So you can get an idea of what is truly temperament and what is handling by comparing the whole herd to each other. But Temple Grandin has done some really good whirl research. And high whirls are more reactive, just like in horses. Low whirls are less reactive. And in a cow, a good center whirl is typically ideal. In cows, they look for different things in cow whirls. It's fascinating. They have a lot of whirls that tell about fertility and tenderness, meat quality, things like that.
Wha
In cattle, a whirl that's set off center like to eat either side, or a long whorl. I believe they found a long whorl, especially in a bull, shows lower fertility.
Hmm.
So, yes, definitely cow whorls, but not judged the same as horse whorls, not completely.
I am curious now. True is still a baby, but I do have plans to breed her when she is older and obviously keep the baby because, that would be
Of
my
course.
grandkid, basically. But looking at her, so she's got a low whorl with a feather.
Mhm.
Have they done any studies? Are you aware of any like fertility kind of associations in horses, or does this strictly seem to be a cow thing? It sounds like the cow whorls map well to equine whorls, at least as far as like extrovert introvert.
They do very closely, and I think a large part of the reason why we don't know if the whorls apply the same to horses is that we don't worry a whole lot about fertility, and we don't eat them. So,
True.
we're not
We
really
don't care
looking
if they're
for this.
tender.
Yes. But I don't believe that the feather whorl on a horse's forehead is the same as a feather whorl on a cow's forehead,
Okay.
showing a lack of fertility.
Mm,
I don't
that's a relief.
I don't know that there have been studies on horses showing about fertility related to whorls. I always wonder about it. It seems like there should be. I
Mm.
think the thing on horses, theoretically, that should show lower fertility is uneven body whorls,
Okay.
like different whorls in different places, different
Right.
size of
Lack of
whorls on
symmetry.
different sides. Yeah, lack of symmetry, exactly. There's a thing called biodynamic farming. I'm really not
What is
entirely sure
that?
what it is. I don't
Okay.
it's a very organic, natural type of farming. That's all I know. But it's according to the person who gave me this little tidbit, and I haven't done a whole lot of research on it yet, they believe that a whirl to one side or the other of a cow can show dysfunction in the testicle or ovary on the opposite side from the whirl. That is the theory, the very loose theory from some random person on the internet that I've been meaning to research. But it
A
does
body
make
whirl.
sense. Yes, a body whirl. It does make sense that uneven body whirls could show things like that.
Okay, so I have your book. I actually bought multiple copies and given it to friends and family of mine because it has been such a game changer for my understanding of my equine partners and just working with horses and appreciating the amazing creatures they are. But for listeners who might not be familiar, what is the science behind whorls? How is that connected to temperament and how our their bodies function? Or I say our bodies because we have whorls too, right?
We do. I'm not even going to try to get into human whirls. That is way outside my realm of experience. Horses are more fun. So, whirls develop in the womb as the embryo is forming, not at the stage where we can see like a tiny horse, but at the stage where there's that tiny little blob of tissue, just like pinprick sized. Everything is there in that little spot. And as the brain starts to develop, pressure on the follicles as tissue is growing causes the hair follicle to grow, to lay in different directions. So as the brain grows, places where there's more activity or less activity cause the whorl to grow differently in different places. And then as the tiny blob of tissue at that tiny little stage gets bigger, we have that same effect over the rest of the body. I don't know if it's caused, a lot of it is genetic. It's passed down from the parent. You can get different whorls passed down on the head or the body. Generally, about 50% of the foals show the exact whorl as their dam, but the other 50% is obviously the sire or the combination or something really weird, because they can also be affected by starvation or sickness or stress.
Mm.
Everything going on also adds input. So we get the genetic input into the world and the epigenetic, I believe is what it is, the effect of the environment upon the development of the foal. So whorls develop in the womb, and as the foal grows, the body whorls, possibly the way that they're laying in there. If they're constantly to one side will stretch more than the other, one side is drawn up. There's all kinds of stuff that develops it. So they are born with, I mean, we're all born with temperament that we have, the personality. And that is what we're born with, is these traits. Behavior is different. Behavior is the way the outside world affects our personality. So horses aren't born with behavior, they're born with temperament. But if we know what that temperament is, we can change the way we interact with the horse in order to get the best possible behavior from them based upon their temperament.
Interesting. I find that fascinating that it's also hereditary. I've been thinking about that a
Yes.
lot with True, thinking that one day I'd like to breed her. She's not for everybody, and I love that about her, but I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness, how am I gonna like, if you have a mini me, girl, like, I'm gonna be
Aw.
done for," because she is so logical about things, just cold, calculating. If she does not have a good enough reason, there's nothing you can do to change her mind. And I love that you tied that to, they have their temperament that they're born with, and we can affect the behavior we end up with by changing how we interact with them. And I think that's why I loved your book so much, because it really is a window into what temperament means and how best to work with different temperaments. When I got True, she was very different than the horse that I had previous to her, who was just a single center whirl. And so suddenly I'm having a horse that's questioning and needing logical reasons. And I'm like, what is happening? And so it was so comforting, I think, to have that kind of insight into, yeah, there are these temperaments, there are these personalities there, and it doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means that I had to change how I thought about my relationship with my horse, because she needs very different things from me. You mentioned horsenalities and extrovert, introvert, left brain, right brain. So when we talk about horsenality, how do we typically categorize that? It's a spectrum, right?
It is. Everything's a spectrum. It's all a little bit of this, a little bit of that. In theory, a center whirl, or the ideal, I say that with quotation marks because there is no ideal. The ideal whirl shows a horse who is equally drawn from all the different brain types. So the brain is divided into four halves: introvert, extrovert, and right brain and left brain. So that doesn't mean that there's a quarter of each of them. It's four halves and they overlap. Horses can and should have pieces of every one of them. There is nothing that is purely left brain and purely right brain, or purely introvert and purely extrovert. We all have pieces of that put together, but we all have different personalities. We're not all that same person with an equal amount of introvert, extrovert, right brain, and left brain. I say we because people, just like horses, there's no difference between us, is there? So obviously, an extrovert, it doesn't so much mean that they like people, although in general, yes, extroverts are more people oriented. But an extrovert horse, their emotions are out there for the world to see. They show when they're happy, they show when they're upset. They've got everything out on display, and they're willing to talk about it. They want to let you know what's going on. They're curious, or usually more energetic. Yes, curious, energetic, out there.
They are thinking through it externally to their body. You can tell what's on their mind physically.
Yes, very much so. And showing that their ears are usually forward.
Mm.
Just an interesting side. Whereas introverts, their ears, they tend to carry them backwards, not laid flat back. They're not threatening. They're looking inward because they carry their emotions inside. They hide them, they hold them within. They're not out there for the world to see. They're thinkers. They need to think things through instead of just immediately reacting like an extrovert. They don't not like people. They can be very friendly, very happy, but they're not as emotional and out there with it. They are not often not as energetic, which doesn't mean they don't go run around and buck and play, but they're not wanting to move and run all the time.
Yeah, that's not how they process.
Yeah, no. As an introvert, I totally get that. I need to be still and quiet and think, and I don't want to show my emotions to the world. Yes, I need to think these things through first. So that's one pair of the halves, is introvert and extrovert. The other pair of halves is right brain and left brain. If we think about it in people, right brain controls your left hand. It usually shows more artistic tendencies, whereas left brain controls your right hand, which shows more logic and its language skills and thinking, math, that sort of thing. Whereas right brain is emotions and sensitivity and reactions. So a left brain horse is going to be your buddy. He's like He's like football jock. Yeah, slap you on the back and laugh and tell a good joke and just, a good buddy. Whereas a right brain horse is a lover. He's poetic and romantic and sweet and sensitive, and his feelings are easily hurt. We don't want to offend him. We don't want to, we have to be there to support a right brain horse. We can't force them into anything. We can't make them get over their fear. We can't say, come on, toughen up, buddy, let's go. We have to help them and hold their hand and walk them through it. Whereas a left brain horse is going to be less sensitive and emotional. They're going to be more like your horse, thinking things through, demanding a reason. They need logic and the why and wherefore.
Have you given me a good enough reason for this to be worth my time?
Yes, I have one too. I love it. It's the funnest thing in the world.
Yes. That's how I understood her. I mean, I loved her no matter what, but people would react to her like, "Oh man, she's difficult." I'm like, "Actually no. Like now that I get it, she's not trying to be difficult at all."
Yes. Well, see, we have to understand the type, because if we try to teach a strongly right brain horse the same way we do a strongly left brain horse,
Yeah, you're going to hurt their
we're going to
feelings.
have a wreck. We're going to have a nervous wreck. Because a right brain horse needs repetition. We need to do it over and over until it becomes something they're used to and can understand. A left brain horse, we do it once they get the idea, we move on before they get bored.
Yep.
I mean, you
And
can't,
annoyed.
yes, and annoyed. So horses will have tendencies more in one direction or the other. We have generally the right brain extrovert or left brain extrovert and a right brain introvert or left brain introvert. But there's every combination of those traits from the center whirl, which is an even combination in general of all those traits, to the most extreme, like the little stud that had been gilded that I got to
Hmm.
train, who just couldn't handle life. He was an extreme right brain extrovert. When we're looking at forehead whorls, we can tell which of those categories the horse will fall into just by looking at the whirl, which can help us go into the relationship offering the type of training and support the horse needs instead of having to figure that out as we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been so eye-opening. I'm so glad I stumbled across you as a resource in training my own little one. You've got 2 or 3 horses that I frequently see you post on the Tricks website. What does your current herd look like? And tell me about their whirls.
We have three horses right now. I've got Rusty, who is my main man. He is a side by side double whirl. I got him when he was, I believe, a 3-year old through Forever Morgans. That's a breed specific rescue. They go after Morgans. And he had ended up in a kill pen in Oregon or Washington at Sunnyside, wherever that is, somewhere out west. And they were looking for a home for him. They needed a home. They needed a volunteer to foster him immediately. That was Halloween. My mom had mentioned it to me that day. She's like, I wasn't going to tell you, but I was bored and complaining about not having any horses to train. I had horses, good, well behaved old horses, but I wanted something to train on. So I was complaining to her about being bored. And she's like, well, there is this horse that needs a home. So I said I would take him, and I somehow ended up with him. He came with the warning that he did not have any personal space. And I'm like, well, whatever. I can deal with that. I know how to start horses. I got this. But he got here, and he is a sweet, nice guy, very friendly and happy to be petted and handled until he wasn't. If he wanted to go somewhere and you said no, he would just walk right through you. And I had tried all the traditional training methods and nothing could touch him because he needed a reason. He didn't care if I whacked on him, and I didn't. I had whacked on him as hard as I was comfortable whacking. I don't want to hit horses. I don't like hitting horses. It wasn't working, and I wasn't going to beat him, but I could not get him out of my space. I mean, if he wanted to walk through you, he'd just walk right into you, and it didn't matter.
And that's
He was
dangerous.
He was extremely dangerous on the ground. I mean, I couldn't hardly lead him. If he decided he wanted to go, he'd hit the end of the lead rope and I'd get blisters with gloves on trying to lead him. I could not round pin him. He would go around until he didn't want to, and then he'd just say no. If you tried to turn him on the fence, he would just go right through you. I couldn't touch him with any traditional training method. That is where his whirl, his temperament came into play with his nurture. I found someone who had known him when he was a baby. He came with papers. He was easy to track down, his history.
So you said double side by side whirl quickly. What does that
Yes.
indicate as far as temperament?
It shows a combination of right brain and left brain, both extrovert. They have an extreme ability to focus. There's supposed to be, I don't have any personal experience with this, but there is supposed to be a great number of high level horses in whatever event with side by side doubles because they have such extreme intelligence and focus that they can do pretty much anything. But there's also strong left brain traits in there. And along with all that logic and reasoning, they aren't scared of anything. So you're not going to scare them off of you. They're just, they're going to do whatever they want if they're not handled in a way that encourages them to be well behaved. So I had tracked down a lady who knew him as a foal, and she said that all the horses on this place where he was bred were spoiled rotten. They were allowed to run over people and develop the worst possible uh, behavior. And with most of the horses, that was probably fine because we can teach them good manners again. But because of Rusty's whorls, that nurturing affected him, teaching him that he didn't have to listen, it didn't matter, and he would just do whatever he wanted. So his whorls very much affected the way he responded to the way he was nurtured. But then he got here, and I finally figured out that we needed to do some trick training and positive reinforcement as a last ditch effort to do something with him because he would also bite,
Oh my
just,
goodness.
little nips, because whatever.
Right. Because why not? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you going to
Move.
do?
I'll bite you. Yes. And I had small children. I think my youngest was just over a year. So then my daughter would have been 3, 4, something like that. I don't know. I couldn't let him anywhere near them, but I figured that since he already bit everything, I might as well teach him to fetch. Because I saw some lady on the internet doing it. I'm like, oh, hey, we could do that. So I started rewarding him for the things I did want to see instead of trying to punish him for the things I didn't want to see. And by giving him the reason to be good, I hate to say that, there is no good and bad. They're just doing whatever we've taught them to. But
Yeah.
by
Reason
giving
to
him a
comply.
reason, yes, he turned around and went from this horse who was dangerous on the ground to the one who I completely trusted with my small children. He was so safe on the ground, so safe to ride. He's not a quiet horse still. He's hot and energetic and listens very well to the point that he's completely safe to do anything at all on. That complete lack of fear when channeled in a more productive manner went from running over people to being willing to do anything at
Yeah.
all. I mean,
I'm
yeah.
shocked to hear this story, just seeing, the end results, little clips of videos that you've, demonstrated with Rusty on the Tricks website. I'm just like, whoa, there was a time where he wasn't a unicorn. My
Yeah.
goodness.
He was very much not a unicorn. I think I ended up with him because all the other people who had volunteered to foster stopped and thought about it and were like, "No, we don't want this horse here. We need something not quite so dangerous." And I was like, "Whatever.
This particular
I'm not
life
smart
lesson is
enough to."
not for me.
Yes. But yeah, it's he's a very, very good boy now. Best horse ever.
Yeah.
Then we have a 3-year-old. I think he's a 3-year-old Morgan. Pretty sure he's 3. It's hard to remember ages. I don't know how old my kids are, much less my horses. But he comes with no baggage. He's just a very nicely bred, very nicely raised young guy. And he has a single whirl just
Is
set
this Sunshine?
slightly high. This is Sunshine.
He's
Beautiful little
pretty.
Palomino.
Yeah.
Isn't he gorgeous? I'm really not a Palomino person. My mom talked me into him, and my daughter wanted a Palomino. Like, we're not buying a Palomino because he's a Palomino. I don't care what my daughter wants. And my mom's like, oh, but come on. Everything else about him is good too. And since my mom has chosen all my best horses, I said,
Yeah, of
fine,
course.
we'll look at him. And he has everything going for him besides color. I mean, not that the color's bad, but he's not good
He
just
makes
because of
it
his
work for him.
color.
Yes.
Yes,
He
yes,
is
he
very
does.
cute.
But he is an extrovert. I really like my extroverts, obviously. But he tends towards right brain extrovert, which is the opposite of Rusty. I mean, Rusty is
Hmm.
strongly left brain extrovert, and Sunshine is strongly tending towards right brain extrovert. So he is very sweet and kind, and he wants to be in your pocket all the time. And he's scared of a lot of stuff, and he's tends to spook and jump, and he's really careful about it. He's spooked quite a few times where he could have smashed me, and instead he like will jump towards me, but end up jumping in place, and then we'll just stop there. So
It's
I
thoughtful.
appreciate the right brain tendencies, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're just different. He needs more support, reassurance, and he's turning into a wonderful little horse. Just a very good boy. I'm looking forward to getting him going.
Yeah. And you've started him entirely with the positive reinforcement, right?
I have
Or
ever
are
since he
you
got
using
here.
both?
That's Well, I mean, I use the majority of positive reinforcement. All my horses know how to give to pressure. Of
Mhm.
course, I have
Right.
no problem at all with using pressure. I just don't have any particular interest in using a round pin. I've never since Rusty, I've kind of forgotten how. I mean, he couldn't, and that was almost 10 years ago. 2000, yeah, 16 when he got here. And he was the last horse I tried to round pin, and it didn't work, and I just
So you
I've
didn't use
forgotten
it.
how to train horses normally.
I can't wait until hopefully we get to a point where this idea of what's normal training turns into whatever's best for the horse. That's another eye-opening thing about reading your book and the trick training that you do. There's so many different ways to accomplish learning a behavior, learning a skill with your horse. None of them is necessarily inherently better or worse, but it's just like you just said, all of this understanding of how your horse thinks lets you learn how to be a better teacher for them. I can't wait until hopefully as an industry we start moving to that direction of like, okay, traditional is not normal anymore. Normal is what works for this particular
Yes,
horse.
so much that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with round pinning a horse. I have put
Some need
Sunshine
it.
in. Well, yes, and it's
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 like
good. It gets him
meditation
moving
for
and
some. Yeah.
yeah. With Sunshine, I'll put a saddle on him and take him into the closest thing to a round pin I have and just we work on transitions and moving with the saddle on so he can get used to the feel of it before someone is sitting on him doing that. And that's just wonderful. It improves our communication that much more. But there's other horses. I remember when I was starting horses, I'd get some of them and I'd get them in the round pen and they'd panic and they're running laps and they're basically running on the side of the round pen. And even at the time, I was sitting there thinking, wow, there's got to be something better. This isn't good for this horse. This isn't working. I mean, most of the time it did work out in the end. Was able to get the horse to a point where they weren't quite as afraid and they could go good under saddle. But at the time, even I was just wishing that I had some other tool, that there was some other way to approach this poor horse because this isn't good. This isn't what this horse needs. And now, with a wider variety of tools available, I could have approached those horses completely different. I would have approached those horses different, and we all would have been better off.
You bring up an interesting point about the idea of stress when you're trying to train a horse. How has the idea of positive reinforcement and particularly trick training kind of given you an extra tool that you wish you had had before?
Trick training lets us approach the scary and difficult things with less focus and drive to overcome that obstacle. And by not focusing directly on the obstacle, we can instead build up to it as a fun game instead of trying to get over being afraid of a tarp, instead of like forcing the horse at the tarp or the tree stump, whatever scary thing, instead of trying to make the horse go to that tree stump. You're going to get up there, you're going to behave. We start in a completely different spot and with things that aren't scary at all. We're like, "Oh, hey, here's this completely not scary tennis ball. Can you touch it?" The horse touches it with their nose, they get a cookie. We build that into a fun game. And then we go from touching the tennis ball to touching a cone to touching a hat to touching a ball, whatever, a bigger ball, bouncy ball, not a tennis ball. But we teach them that it's a really fun game to go up and investigate these things, random things that aren't scary. And once we have that installed, we can take slightly scarier things and go up and touch them until the horses realize that we're never going to ask them to do anything that's going to hurt them. We're never going to ask them to do anything that is beyond their comfort zone, like completely beyond their comfort zone, going to terrify them to the point that we then can look at the scary thing as a fun game. Rusty was started with tricks, and he hadn't been riding very long when we were riding in the yard here, and there was a plastic bag that flew across the yard. We all know how terrifying plastic bags are. Rusty
Yes.
went up to it and fetched it. So I'm on this very green horse with like a month or so's training on him, riding on him, and we're walking up to a plastic bag with his nose down to sniff it. That was both one of the funnest and the most terrifying moments of my life. Like, we're gonna die.
This is how it ends.
Yes. But that was it. He was fine. He didn't eat it, but he did pick it up and chew on it. It was all good. And we're
Wow.
working that direction with Sunshine. He's gone from being terrified to be in the yard by himself with the wind blowing to thinking that, this isn't bad. I don't care. Let's go find the food. And it makes a huge difference.
Wow. Yeah, it's almost like they need not necessarily the repetition almost, but more they need enough other positive experiences under their belt so they can learn to reason with themselves like, "Oh, well, I haven't died yet." I mean, whenever mom tells me to touch something, I've never gotten eaten and I've touched like 10 things. So this is probably fine.
Yes. Those positive experiences are incredibly important.
A friend of mine was we were joking about this before and I was talking about how silly baby horses are and she's like, "Well, it's the first time she's been alive." I'm like, what a great way of putting that, you know? But it's true because she hasn't been alive long enough to have enough of those other experiences to be able to understand and make a good judgment call about whether something is an emergency or not. There's maybe that was only the first or second plastic bag she'd seen. I mean, she didn't know if that was a horse eating kind or not.
Yes. I think those experiences, we need to build up more than desensitizing a horse, getting out everything we can find to wave at them until they stop spooking from them. If instead of trying to desensitize a horse to every single thing we can find, we teach them to trust us and that no matter what we come across, we will never introduce them to things that will actually eat them and we will do our best to keep them alive. That trust is much stronger than desensitization.
I would agree. Yeah, because and the other thing is you can't possibly anticipate every scary thing that they're going to encounter in their life. There's no
Never.
way.
Yeah.
So there's no way to fully desensitize a horse. It's just not possible. What is your favorite whirl pattern? Do you have one?
Whatever the current favorite horse has. It's like color. It's just whatever my current favorite horse is. I've had all kinds of great horses with all kinds of great whirls. My two best ever horses have been double whirls, stacked double or side by side double. I think more I have a type which is extrovert. I need my extroverts with their emotions out there and visible, and I enjoy that. I have ended up on accident with a right brain introvert, and he and I just didn't. I think I discovered recently, it occurred to me that I might be a right brain introvert. It came as a shock. But
Interesting. I was just
right,
going to ask, what would your whirls be?
well, I would not have said that up until the other day when I realized that my tendency is to hold everything within. And as I start getting more and more upset, I just get quieter and quieter and more still until I explode. I came unglued on my poor husband the other last weekend, and that was what made me realize it. That with all this stress, I was holding it and holding it, and then yeah, I was screaming all of a sudden. I didn't mean to. But
Goodness.
that's what right brain introverts do. They get very still and very quiet and they hold it within. And we don't always realize that they're getting so upset. I didn't realize when he was getting so upset because I'm used to my extroverts. And there's people who get along great with that. They're still really good horses. It's just not a really good horse for me.
Mm,
I don't know if I would get along with a left brain introvert or not, but I think I like my extroverts. I like the emotion, I like the energy, I like the enthusiasm for moving in life. And different people get along with completely different world types, different horse types. There is no great whirl, there's no perfect whirl. Even a center whirl is not necessarily going to be the perfect horse for everybody.
right. It's
So
just the one that's
I
born with the temperament that's most likely going to be enough of one way or the other for most people if
yeah.
they are also treated in such a way that the behaviors are that way too.
Yes, just exactly like that. And they can also, a horse with a single center whirl can have some pretty major extremes that show in the head type.
Okay,
So you
tell me
could have
about
a
that.
center whirl, but an extreme, a big jibba, a big bump between their eyes, or a big dish. Or I've seen some really, really unusual head types on a horse that supposedly has, I mean, has, but they have the center whirl, but that doesn't mean they have the easygoing
Center temperament.
personality. Yes,
Yeah.
center temperament. Thank you. Yes, it doesn't mean they're going to have that temperament. The
Huh.
head shape affects it greatly, which is why people will often say, "Well, I had a center whirl and he wasn't blah 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 perfect. Therefore, whirls can't actually work." I'm like, well, that's because we got to look at everything. We got to fit head type and ear shape and all the different things in there. It's never just one thing.
Hmm. Okay. One thing that I had been meaning to ask you in the last 2 years, and it just never occurred to me when I'm on Facebook, apparently. Um, when I originally had posted a photo of True when she was little, you had mentioned she's got a cork bump. What is a cork bump? Because when I look at her compared to her great grandsire, Bold Ruler, I see a very similarly shaped profile. Did he have a cork bump too?
I don't know. I would have to look him up. A quirk bump is just a bump somewhere on the profile of the horse. It can be above or between the eyes. I don't generally consider it to be a quirk bump, although it has the same basic effect. But it's generally eye level down to about mid profile. Just a bump in there. It adds spice, it adds quirks. I don't know why. I have never come across a reasonable logical explanation for it, but it throws in a few extra behaviors.
Where the audacity is kept.
Oh, yes.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. So you look at profile shape and ear size and shape and chin size and shape and lip size and shape and eye size and shape.
Every
All
single
of it.
thing. It gets a little overwhelming, doesn't
Oh
it?
my goodness. So you have a Facebook page that is the Horse Whirl Study, right? And you are
Yeah.
so good. Every time I log on, someone has posted a picture of their horse and you've gotten this really succinct way of quickly registering what you see in a photo. How do I learn how to do
Well, you buy my book.
that?
No, seriously, you just look at a lot of horses. You gotta spend the time training your eye to get used to them. Like, I couldn't look at mules and tell you near as closely temperament as I can horses because I spend my time looking at horses. I'd love to have more experience with mules, but I just need more of them to look at. So you need more time looking at them, experience with the horses, time. Everything takes time and experience.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
get your eye used to the variation in sizes and shapes and the full variety of expression that is out there. I mean, if you only ever look at one horse, you're not going to be able to compare it to all these other horses that are out there. By looking at 10 different horses a day on the Facebook page, I am blessed with the experience of seeing the tiny little differences in them. My favorite is spotting when the horse is giving you side eye. If you just look, the horse is standing there. I mean, they're horses. Their faces aren't, in theory, very ex-
But they
expression
are.
filled. Oh, there's so much. You can spot these tiny little things where the horse is looking at the person out of the corner of their eye, thinking, "What in the world are you doing over there?" And it makes the muzzle tense up, and the eyes are hard, and the ears are usually cocked just a little bit. But if you weren't looking for that, you wouldn't be able to tell that the horse was
Mm.
giving the side eye. You might think they were just sitting there.
Is there a world type that you have not had any experience with? Sometimes, like someone on the Facebook page will post the most unusual patterns to me. Do you come across that often? Are there patterns out there that you think exist but you haven't seen them?
There's patterns I could never dream of that exist. It's like people post them at least once a week, something so strange and unusual that I can't even begin to guess. But although I say I can't even begin to guess, we can take the map that the horse's head provides us and look at the general location on the head, and that can give us a basic idea.
And the rest of the head shape for context too.
Yes, and the rest of the head shape. When there's whirls that I have no experience with and am having a hard time guessing, I usually do ask for pictures of the rest of the head because a dish to the profile shows sensitivity. A convex profile shows the opposite. It shows a tough, determined horse who's not going to be generally overly sensitive. I can look at the ears and see if they are very sensitive or if they're very steady and easygoing. I can see if they're energetic or if they're going to be lazy. I mean, and then we can take that head shape and get a better idea of what the whirls are going to be talking about.
Interesting. So I can tell you from reading your book and just being able to interact with you on Facebook, you have really changed the way that I recognize what's going on with my horse and how I can understand training her. What do you wish more people understood about horse whirls and training their own horses?
Mostly about whirls is that there's no bad ones. There is, I mean, we need to take every horse as an individual. People say, people who have obviously never listened to me talk about whirls at least, say, well, my horse is an individual. I'm not going to look at the whirls and classify them by that into not going to pigeonhole them. I'm going to look at my horse. I'm like, well, if you would pay attention to what the whirls mean, they're showing you how incredibly unique and individual each horse is. We can help ourselves out considerably by taking advantage of that, by listening to what the horse has to tell us before we go in and try to have that conversation with the horse.
And tell them what they need to do.
Yes, yes. I'm not big on telling horses what they need to do anyway. And yet somehow I have well behaved horses. I don't know how that happens.
That's interesting. And what I'm looking to train True to do with True Heart Healing, I'm more of a one-on-one kind of person. I am a low whirl introvert myself. And it's funny because I think because of that, my horse being a low whirl introvert, like she knows exactly which buttons to push. In fact, she might have installed some of them at this point. Um,
She has you well trained.
oh my goodness, yes, she's got my number. I'm thinking about, if do you find yourself using whirls to classify human temperaments, and is there maybe a basis or an opportunity there for me looking as like far as therapeutic equine services? Can I match human whirls with horse whirls, or maybe purposely mismatch them to focus on certain skill development?
I am not ever going down the rabbit trail of human worlds and classifying humans. There's too much
Mm,
baggage that comes with that, too
mm.
much history, and yeah,
Do you ever catch yourself thinking, oh, this human must have this whirl?
I do. Yes. And occasionally I'll be watching children at one of the kids' activities and we're thinking, oh, look, that one's got doubles. Wow. Bet that's a handful at home. But I don't think there is a personality type that is just going to mesh with a certain horse personality type. I'm an introvert. I love my extroverts. You're an
Mm,
introvert. You're loving your introvert.
mhm.
I've seen extroverts who love their introvert horses and vice versa. I think we're all unique in our combination of the right brain, left brain, introvert, extrovert traits enough that we all enjoy different combination in horses.
Mm.
So no, I don't think that there is a good match or mismatch.
It's just a matter of taking them as individuals, just like we're
Yeah.
individuals, and the magic happens when we just build that relationship.
And I don't have enough people experience. I try to hide out here on the place with my horses and my cows and see very few people in person. I really am surprised to hear that you classify yourself as an introvert. I really, listening to your chosen path and what you want to do with the horses and helping people, I thought, wow, she must be quite the extrovert wanting to go interact with people like that. I never would have guessed.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm just a very well trained introvert. But when I think
Mm,
about when I feel most relaxed and comfortable, yeah, I'm by myself. And I have to think things through before I feel comfortable acting. Usually when I act at or react to something, I spend the next couple days overthinking it. Was that the right thing? Did I come off the wrong way? Like.
I do. I understand completely.
And so it's funny. I think what may have changed for me is my first degree was in cognitive neuroscience, and there's not really a whole lot you can do in that field with a bachelor's. So I joined Teach for America and I taught special ed for 3 years. And having to entertain eighth graders in mass at 8 a.m. requires a certain level of pizzazz.
Wow.
And so I think it was just a skill that I had to develop.